Fox News reports Biden's cancer claim shocks Twitter users, either the biggest bombshell or biggest gaffe. I think it's a fair assessment. But what I want to talk about in relation to Joe Biden and Donald Trump is this up here in the top right, the NewsGuard certification. As of July 18th, the Daily Beast has been reinstated as true, real news. And Fox News has been downranked.
Fascinating.
And so the reason is they say that Fox doesn't regularly correct errors because there's a bunch of stuff that Tucker Carlson's put out that is factually incorrect. And I think NewsGuard is actually right about that. But there's an interesting question outside of just Fox News in the presidency. Let me show you this. NewsGuard says, while former President Trump did claim in a February 28th, 2021 Fox News interview that he requested that Congress authorize 10,000 National Guardsmen to bolster Capitol security before January 6th, there has been no corroboration of this claim. Why is it that when there is something that is for the narrative, they can choose to ignore the president? Whatever the narrative is, they will ignore. If Donald Trump came out and admitted to wrongdoing, they would say, well, Trump confirmed it. If Donald Trump comes out and admits to something or says something happened that would be bad for their narrative, they say it's fake news. How does NewsGuard decide that the word of the president of the United States is not good enough to accept? Meanwhile, Joe Biden can come out and say he has cancer to the world, and it's also considered less than credible. Now, that's a very serious problem. If the president is outright and overtly lying and the media just says, oh, yeah, we don't take the president's word for it, I can understand that. You want verification. Yet if you Google search Biden confirms, you'll see a bunch of story about Biden confirming the cost of, Biden confirms unprecedented G7 move on Putin set to cost billions. How do we know? It's the president. His word's meaningless. Biden's also said he has cancer. Why should I believe anything? Yeah. Why should the media be allowed to claim that Biden's confirmed something and then say, oh, but his cancer is not true? How many times has Biden come out and said something nonsensical? And then the White House has come out and said, actually, what really happened is this. When Donald Trump says something, they say he's lying about it. You can't trust him. It's a nonsense reality where the media decides when the president's telling the truth. How does that make sense?
My thing is, you do the journalist thing. I think the real question is, when did it stop? Did you have that ethical basis of unbiased, right? I'm just going to report the facts as they are. Like, I'm not going to I'm not going to put any lenience on it. Like, this is what he said. You make the decision of whether or not it is. Why does it have to have all the other context behind it? And we don't do it either way you look at it. Like, CNN watchers don't get mad when CNN does it, but they get mad when Fox does it, and vice versa. I still believe the problem in America, as much as we talk about the system, it's not the system, it's Americans. And I love the country. I ran for office. I ran for office in Frederick. I ran for county council at large. I ran actually the year last governor race when the mood in the country was significantly anti-Trump and Democrats came out and drove. I ran as a Republican because in Maryland you got to pick, right? I knocked on over 100,000 doors. Do you know how many times I discussed my platform?
How many? One time, huh?
One time. Ironically, it was an older man wearing a Bernie Sanders shirt smoking weed in his retirement community.
Oh, wow.
We had a good 45-minute conversation with the guy.
Dude, yeah.
But every door I knocked on, it was, what are you running as? And if I was running at what you wanted me to run as, you got my vote. Like, you didn't even know you had no clue what my platform was. And if I wasn't what you wanted me to be, you slammed the door in my face and walked
Crazy.
off.
Yeah. Well, I think at one time in our country, your party affiliation was shorthand for the things that you believed in and your values, not just politically, but culturally. Yeah. And that shifted so much. I mean, the senator from, I'm forgetting his name right now, from Oregon who just lost, he's the first incumbent elected official from Oregon to lose a race since the 1980s. He said, I'm a moderate Democrat, and basically our party has been controlled by socialists. So it has moved away from me. I know that we hear conservatives say this on many different directions. I mean, you'll talk to libertarians who say, I don't feel the way my parents felt socially. I identify fiscally as conservative, but I'm socially left. I think that we are coming out of a day and age where you could believe someone's political affiliation to be something of substance, whereas now you really do have to do the work to ask someone, and no one wants to do that, especially when you're suddenly, I think it's great that you went door to door, but like if you have kids in the house, you're doing something else, you don't want to be like, well, how do you feel about this? These are the issues that are important to me. You want the shorthand. You want to say, oh, you're affiliated with my team. That's good enough.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't really function in today's society.
Well, I mean, the real rubber where it meets the road, and no one pays attention to this, is the local elections. You know, everybody's hung up on Congress and president. But hey, if your property tax is going up, that's the county council guy, right? And when we went
comptroller,
and when we went to debates, you know, and I'm running for the entire county, there were like 10 people in the audience, and it's like, you guys really, we're not involved, and we have the liberty, honestly, to not be involved, because for the most part, people are like, well, listen, man, like, I'm doing okay. You know, I'm eating. I'm not worried about whether or not I'm going to get mugged. I'm not worried about an armed insurrection right now. So, who really cares about Tom that owns a shoe shop that's running for county council? But that's who makes and breaks your life, really.
This is why it always irks me a little bit when people say, you know, vote for me for Congress and I'll clean up this town, or things of that nature. And I'm like, no, you won't. You're going to go to D.C. and represent us to them. If you want to clean up your town, your neighbor, you got to vote local. Yep. And the most important thing, especially for populists, is voting local. Because, you know, some people are in favor of a convention of states, some aren't. But you want to set the rules, you want to change the laws in your state. Maybe you're pro-choice, maybe you're pro-life. That's your state reps. Yep. The left might be wondering why, you know, Texas is banning abortion. Well, the state level politicians are the one who do that, not Congress. Yeah. But all anyone ever talks about is national level stuff. It's a mistake.
The governor of New Hampshire really upset people when he said he wasn't going to run for Senate. He was going to stay in New Hampshire because he believed his work was, he could do more for the people of New Hampshire as governor than as senator. Because as senator, you end up spending most of your time in Washington. Yeah. I mean, it's not that there isn't a place for both, but I think being involved locally is really where you make a huge difference. It's unappreciated.
I think the real catch-22 is that I really feel that 85 to 90% of people that go into politics honestly initially go into politics for very, very good reasons, very honest reasons, ethical reasons. They want to make a difference. The problem is, the longer you play that game, the more you become institutionalized with what it takes to get something to actually be accomplished. I think a lot of people lose sight of how complicated even a state level bill is, much less trying to pass a law that's going to affect the entire United States. And that's why we get these bills that are ungodly links that have, you know, I'm going to make something up at the time, you know, we want to pet puppies is thrown in with, hey, let's give $20 billion to Ukraine. But we lead with, let's pet puppies. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And
it's like one paragraph of we will pet puppies and then 5,000 pages of how we're going to strip money from the working class to fund a war in Ukraine.
But the problem is,
the headline is, you know, senator votes against pet puppy.
Yes.
Every time. They do it to Thomas Massey a lot. Yeah. I noticed. He'll be like, I voted no on this. And they'll be like, how could you vote no against puppies? And I'll be like, because that provision said we blow them up afterwards.
But then no one wants to listen to that part either.
That part's boring. Yeah, it's always bothered me that people get so frustrated with federal politics. I'm like, you need to look at your next door neighbor. You need to look at who's running for city council, who your mayor is going to be, who's running your school board. These are important questions that affect you way more than the president ever will. Honestly, and people don't want to put the work in. The federal government is there. We can complain about them. It's not that big a deal. Sure, they tax us, whatever, but for the most part, they leave us alone.
That tax, though.
Yeah. Oh, I know. But if you actually do want to make a positive difference in your culture, you need to run like you did, or you need to very least pay attention to what's going on in your own community.
Part of why national politics is easier to get involved in is because it's televised. A lot of it's televised. Yeah. We watch C-SPAN and crap like that. But like local politics isn't televised enough for people to because they don't want to go to the meeting. People just don't want to. They want to stay at home and witness it from their TV if they can.
I think it is, but people have only watched national news. So it's like when you nowadays with the internet, you're not turning on your local news to see a local public access. People are turning on C-SPAN for Congress, or they're pulling up CNN that only talks about the Fed or federal level. I mean,
at the reality now, speaking broad generalizations, in today's society and economy, both parents have to work. Your kids are involved in 15 different things. So they're going right from piano practice to football practice to ballet practice. They got a busier schedule than most adults now. And so these debates and things, they don't take place till 5:30, 6:30 at night on a Thursday afternoon. Well, that's little Timmy soccer practice. What's the likelihood that I'm going to come to that? Yeah. You know, that's where you lose it.
Is that like Calvinism? The idea that if everyone's working, they can't do anything else?
I'm not.
don't know.
I could be mixing things up. 'Cause
Calvinism was a sect of Christianity, I
Yeah,
believe.
that's
There's
not,
like-
it could be like Puritanism maybe. Where
There's like this
people are
idea-
super busy.
keep everybody busy
Idle
toiling the
hands, the
fields
devil's
so that they
plaything,
can't
right.
do anything else. If everybody has to work 24/7, they can never revolt.
You don't have
It's a
any
very
trouble,
North
I think is what
Korea.
the thought is.
Right,
like,
right.
no one can get into mischief or be lazy or do something like
But
that.
that's like the road to Kim Jong-un's keep everyone starving and then they won't revolt kind of mentality.
But the other problem here now, and we saw this in Maryland, and I was going off about this today because I still can't believe they pushed Cox through in the primary. But at every measurable thing that you can look at, just about, Maryland is substantially better off than it was before Governor Hogan took office. And because I hate the term rhino. It drives me nuts because anytime somebody disagrees with one thing that a Republican said, he or she is now automatically a rhino. And it's really decimated a lot of times the Republican Party, in my opinion. But they go in here and they make this big push for him. And I'm like, dude, you're never going to agree with everything that everyone says. I guarantee you every one of us disagrees on something at this table, right? But what you have to look at is, what is the overall picture? Are we much better than we were there? And then at the same time, like I was arguing with the guy who's like, he's talking about DeSantis. I was like, DeSantis couldn't come here and win in Maryland. And Governor Hogan couldn't take Maryland policy to Florida and get anything done. It's two completely different electorates. And no one wants to acknowledge that. And it's like, listen, if you love DeSantis that much in Florida, which I think it, I went to Daytona during Bike Week and COVID, and they were having a blast. Move to Florida. That's your solution. But if you're going to stay in Maryland, what are your choices? You got your choices of having improvement, where he took us from I think 46th in business and economy to 6 over 8 years. That's massive. Why would you not be happy about that?
I want to ask this question because I'm not sure if it was Alex Jones or someone, I think it might have been Alex, implying that Joe Biden would get sick and then they would replace him or bring in Kamala because Joe Biden can't run. So the question that we've been asking right now is Joe Biden going to run for another term? He says yes. I don't know if I believe it because you've got all these Democrats lining up. You've even got prominent Democrats outright saying to journalists, we don't think Biden's going to run. We don't want him to run. Polls are showing they don't want Biden to run. So how could Biden run against the will of the Democrat voters, against the will of other Democrats, and in the face of all the Democrats running against him? But if that's the case, how do you get Biden out now? Well, some have suggested he'll get sick, or he is sick, or something will happen to his son. I'm wondering what you guys think about this. Just bouncing back to the cancer thing, but taking it this direction. Could it be that this is meant to be sort of just a little sprinkling of the Biden is very sick thing, so that when finally the time comes, they'll say, like other presidents who have feigned illness, yes, he's sick and he needs to step down and Kamala's moving in.
I think that it wasn't intentional only because of their response. Like, no, he meant he used to have it. But I think it is an indication that he's sick and that they will pivot into that as it comes up. I think he'll actually run. He'll be on stage with other Democrats that are running and he'll be like, you know what? You're right. You're the one that needs to take the torch and get like his 60 million followers to just clap and smile and turn towards the next person in line, whoever
See, I wonder if it's going to be the opposite. I wonder if they're going to be like, okay, Joe, so you're not going to run next anymore. So just keep it cool. And he's going to be out somewhere and he's going to be like, yeah, so when I run for re-election, they're going to be like, what do we do? Because we don't actually want to support this guy anymore.
But I think the fact is Joe Biden's old. He is sick. I don't know if he has cancer. But imagine what would happen PR-wise for the Democrats if Joe Biden was on stage in a debate and collapsed. That would be bad for Biden, but good for Democrats.
It's so funny that he said, I have cancer. And you were like, I don't know if he has cancer. Like, you just don't know. And anyone that came to me and told me that, I would believe them. Why would you think they were lying to you? That's crazy.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Why do you think it would be good for Democrats?
It would create a whole lot of sympathy. It would give Biden an exit, which would
be honorable.
An honorable exit. They would say, Biden sacrificed himself to stop Trump, that kind of stuff, or sacrificed his health. They would ham it up. They would say, here's a man who stepped out of retirement after he lost his son, knowing he was sick because he knew America needed a leader. And then, he gets sick and maybe he doesn't die, maybe he just collapses. That's the perfect exit for Biden. It's the perfect positive PR spin. So I'm not saying it will happen. I don't know.
It gives him kind of like a martyr-like, heroic, like exit.
Halo, yeah.
Ugh.
But I don't think they want Camilla. I mean, I think, which I still don't understand how she got the nod as the VP.
I agree, but if just because she steps up as VP doesn't mean she runs in 2024. She'll go out there and let's say hypothetically, Joe Biden faints, on stage or something at some kind of town hall, and they're like, oh no, and then he's like, I can't run. The American people, you're going to need someone younger. Kamala steps in. They remember when they announced the 25th Amendment panel, and everyone was like, they're trying to get Trump out, and then people were like, no, it's for Biden. Like they were preparing to remove Biden.
Yeah.
So they did that. And a lot of people said that, that's what's going to happen. It could still happen. Biden gets sick, faints. Kamala Harris says, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take over as president, but I'm going to step aside and let someone else run.
I'm not gesticulating correctly. She does a lot of this motion.
Well, I'll do my best.
We, the collective, knowing what we know, are going to do what we've always done today, and I'm going to nominate Gadden for be president. I think she is. I still don't understand. Like, obviously, the people that put this stuff together have more experience with it than I do. But of all the people you could have picked, I mean, she wasn't even popular with what they were going for on the base. So
the DNC picks them.
Yeah,
and they pick Biden, and they're going to pick the next one, and they'll probably tell Biden, "We picked this person. Now just support them," or something like that.
Kamala Harris checked the right boxes, I guess.
Yep. Diversity.
Yeah, diversity.
Woman of color, diversity.
But you couldn't find anyone else. I mean, like even
Tulsi Gabbard was a woman of color.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Right?
But she doesn't think inside their box. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is too independent for them. I think Kamala Harris knew this was her shot. She couldn't have run her president. I mean, she wasn't going to get the nomination on her own.
I gotta say, when we were talking about AOC, she went on Colbert and she made up this mishmash hodgepodge of Civil War history that was just hilariously brilliant, and it was a Chad move. It was the ultimate Chad move to go on national television and just make up history. And you got to think about Kamala Harris. When she does these speeches that are considered auto text, like predictive text filler, that's also a Chad move. She's going up on stage knowing she's saying nothing and people clap for her. It's just like the ultimate mockery of your own constituents.
And she just throws that cackle in behind it, and it's just it's like nails on a chalkboard. It's the worst thing.
I mean, she has incredibly low approval ratings. She's not popular at all. I don't know how she.
But who do you pick though? Who do you take? If you could right now, your choice. You got to go Biden or you got to go her. Who do you want running the nation?
Oh, her, Kamala.
Okay.
I'd rather have a predictive text generator, like a literal predictive text generator, than either of them. But Joe, here's my fear with Joe Biden. I think he's corrupt, but he's brain damaged. So he might be like, I want to get a shipment into Iran, and you're like,
what?
Iran? do you mean Iraq? What? No. And then they're like, I guess we're going to be shipping Iran a bunch of military supplies. The president said so, and you're like, whoa, dude. I get he wanted to make money off this illicit deal, but he's sending weapons. So when Biden accidentally said Libya over and over again, I'm like, imagine him in the situation where I'm like, tell him to press the button and they're bombing the wrong country. Jeez. At least Kamala Harris is corrupt, but she can speak properly. You know what I mean? Like, they're both not all with it, but she's just a little bit more cognitively with it.
I mean, honestly, that's a point I hadn't really thought about. Is like, you get your finger on the button, you just begging me to hit it, and then I say the wrong place.
Well, check it out. It's, Kamala and Biden are both corrupt. But Kamala lives on this planet and wants to keep living on this planet. Joe Biden, too, but his brain doesn't work. So, Biden might accidentally blow us up. Kamala doesn't want to ruin. She doesn't want to kill the peasants who supply her with slave labor. You know what I mean?
The question is, though, for me, who do you think pulls the strings? Like, I don't believe there's some reptilian, like, if, you go back, all of a sudden you pull the mask off and there's a lizard person there. But at the same time, it's like, for you to have that much control, is it one person? Is it a group of people? How do you get to be in the group of people? Like, who is actually the one filling out his note card saying, hey, say this, and then also repeat line?
I mean, it may just be staffers. You know,
But that's scarier in
Yeah.
a way. That's like super scary.
I feel like you'd want to take a critical look at who is propping Biden up, because they have so much influence right now, especially if he's not capable of like saying no or being like, maybe I shouldn't say that. I mean, this guy is reading his stage directions.
the shadow government is a 22-year-old intern with no governmental experience. He's just like, I guess Biden should probably say he doesn't want to blow up Russia.
He's in so
It's
deep.
hard.
He doesn't want to get fired.
Yeah.
He's freaked out.
And my
He's bad.
experience with those interns is they're not really happy. I mean, I've been
No.
down to the Capitol to testify for stuff before, and they literally have, which I've always thought was funny when they talk about minimum wage, and they've got a staffer that the door literally opens into them in their little office on the thing, and they're working 70, 80 hours for like $12 an hour. So he's mad, he's angry, and then all of a sudden, it's literally Ron Burgundy. We're gonna show him this time.
He's putting on the prompter, end of quote, repeat the line.
Yep.
He's doing it because he could say F you America, but that's too heavy-handed. It's too much.
Biden might catch that one.
No,
he said
but he'd get
repeat
fired.
line.
Repeat the line.
That's
That's
bad.
crazy.
That's bad.
That's really bad.
That's horrible.
Wow. Well, that's America for you, I guess. This is what the American people wanted, huh? They voted.
Idiocracy.
That's what
People-
apathy gets.
Well, I think it's a cult. I think it's the media. I think it's apathy for a lot of people. They go out and they just hit the D. But I think they were able to get a lot of people in a cult.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You asked why is the media at what point did the media stop serving the transparency and start serving an agenda? The answer to that is when we go to war. Whenever the country goes to war, the media apparatus rallies to start printing propaganda, war propaganda. We went to war, not technically, but in 2001 when we hit Iraq, and then it's never stopped. We're still in this turmoil, and now I guess you could say we're out of Iraq. We're out of Afghanistan. We're still occupying Iraq. And now there's a war between the Ukraine and Russia that the government seems to want to be involved in.
What blows my mind is the shift from 9/12, because I responded to the Pentagon on the terrorist attacks, and secured the Pentagon, and then ultimately took the first team in to start doing remains removal. And when we would leave the Pentagon to go back to do shift changes, you just see everybody, honking the horn, waving the flag, everybody unified. And in such a relatively short period of time, we've just become just really two almost warring tribes. And like literally they've had people say, you might have to fight your neighbor, right? So for me, it's like, when did we make that major shift? And was it just because the news went to a 24-hour cycle and now they need to sell commercial space, or they're only going to put the most divisive, angry rhetoric up because it keeps people engaged? Or is it something more than that?
I think after the 9/11, there was a lot of Muslim hate, and that created the tribes. And so it was like Christian, Muslim, American, and Afghani, whatever. And then it slowly morphed with social media started finding out how much more popular their clicks were when you got angry. But at some point, people got turned against each other, Republicans and Democrats. It was like when Trump got elected, they used that as a catalyst, media apparatus. But I don't know if it's an external thing. It's not all American. NBC News is not all American all the time. Like there's people involved in that aren't American. I don't know that there's necessarily a date, but it was like around 2012 or 2013.
And it's social media, and then when you look though at that side of the house where you get the echo chambers, where now your algorithms only show you the exact same people that believe exactly what you believe, and then you actually go like, hey, man, I'm super right, and everybody backs me up, but because you don't have the town halls, the community engagement anymore. COVID made it worse because everybody was literally confined to their house. And so now we just become further and further, instead of, I think Jordan Peterson is the one that talks about it, is that people are inherently born with he calls them red and blue, like inherently a left worldview and inherently a right worldview. And up until social media, that was actually good because you had to come together and you had to have conversation and compromise. And so we actually kind of got a little bit centrist in the middle of the road. But now, because we don't really have to interact with each other in person that often anymore, and we have these echo rooms on social media, like the divide is just huge. And that's what makes it scary for things like, is it possible for us to see something like a civil war or something where we actually have this big fight coming down the pipe?
I do think so. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Come hang out live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Super chat. We'll even answer some of your questions. If you want to check out the After Hours Censored Show, Go to timcast.com and become a member. We put those up Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. They're very funny, not very family friendly. We'll love to see you there. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.